Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 32 deadline decisions. This is a weekly series where I take you through your final questions and dilemmas ahead of the deadline, and I also discuss press conference updates and in today's video a detailed analysis of captaincy as well. If you do enjoy today's video and you get any use out of it, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, in today's video, there are actually two pretty big announcements. The first being double Game Week 35, which we're going to discuss in a second. But also on top of that, I have a big announcement at the end of the video. It's the same announcement as was in earlier's video about the job that I've taken as a football manager. So if you've already seen my team selection video and you already know that announcement, you can skip the section at the end. But if you have no idea what I'm talking about, and this is the first video you've watched today, I have taken a job as a football manager with a little bit of a twist, and that will be discussed at the end of the video. So please do stick around and watch that, because I'm pretty excited about what the future might hold with regard to that. So, back to the main announcement for FPL, and that is what we've had double Game Week 35 announced. Now, we said that there is a chance this fixture for Chelsea and Spurs goes into 35 or 36, but we actually thought it was more likely to go into 36, and of course we were wrong, and the Premier League have now put that in Game Week 35. That therefore means that we have the big double Game Week 34, we have double Game Week 37, which we've known about for a while, and we now have double Game Week 35. So Chelsea and Spurs are the only two teams now with two remaining doubles this season, and both Chelsea and Spurs will double in 35 and in 37. In 35, sadly, the fixtures aren't particularly good for either team that double. So for Chelsea, it's Aston Villa away and Spurs at home. And then for Spurs, it's Arsenal at home and Chelsea away. Definitely on paper, you would say that the Chelsea fixtures are slightly better because obviously they play against each other, but the other fixture is Aston Villa for Chelsea or Arsenal for Spurs. So the first thing to note is I definitely feel like the Chelsea fixtures are better. And when I'm looking at captaincy right now as things stand, maybe a little bit of recency bias due to his hat-trick, I'm looking at Palmer as probably the best captaincy option here for me, but Son does love to play against big teams. He actually has a very good record against the likes of Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United. He tends to score in these fixtures, so I certainly don't mind the idea of a captaincy on Son, but I do think it will be between those two. So I think I prefer Chelsea's fixtures. I think the other thing that stands out to me here is that defenders probably aren't going to be massively worth it unless they've got some real attacking threat, or unless you're looking at a goalkeeper that might make quite a lot of saves. So I'm sat there in my team at the moment. I have Petrovic, Gusto, and Udogi. No, I'm not particularly expecting clean sheets for either of them in any of these four fixtures. But could you get a clean sheet? Absolutely. Like if Spurs-Chelsea could be 0-0. I mean, both teams defend pretty poorly, so I'm not necessarily expecting that. And Aston Villa-Chelsea, could you see that being a 0-0? Maybe. Even Arsenal versus Spurs tends to be a lot of goals in that game, but I definitely think there are clean sheet possibilities here. But you're not owning defenders expecting clean sheets, really. It would be a nice bonus. The only defenders that I would own are those with real high upside, or like I said, a goalkeeper that you think will make quite a lot of saves. So for Petrovic, Gusto, and Udogi, I am perfectly happy having them. The question, though, therefore falls, for those that don't currently have Spurs and Chelsea defenders, is it worth transfers to bring them in? And also on top of that, on a wildcard, if you're wildcarding in 35, do you have Chelsea and Spurs defenders? Because they have a double-double. So you're getting two extra fixtures with them on top of some of the other defenders. But those extra fixtures just aren't particularly good. And Spurs in particular just have a really horrid set of fixtures because in Game Week 36, they then play against Liverpool. So it's Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, and they also play against Man City in Game Week 37. So I would say that Palmer and Son should be in your team for double Game Week 35, absolutely. And I would be very tempted to add one of Porro, Udogi, Gusto if you wanted to. And maybe alongside that, you have someone like a Brennan Johnson, Maddison, Richarlison, or maybe you take a punt on someone like a Nico Jackson if you want to. But I don't look at this as you have to have triple Spurs and triple Chelsea. But the way that I like to play the game is targeting doubles and maximising the number of fixtures. I'm also not too displeased having 5 players from these two teams. So I'll leave it there. We'll maybe discuss after Game Week 34 in the lead up to 35 which players I think are essential. But the question that I'd like to ask you, based on your current strategy, how many players will you have from Chelsea and Spurs in double Game Week 35 and who are those players? So guys, before answering your questions ahead of Game Week 32 and also taking a detailed look at captaincy, I've made another table where we're going to take a detailed look at the best captaincy option for Game Week 32. And spoiler alert, I still have absolutely no idea who I'm captaining. I thought I would just update you on the key press conference information that we have as of Friday. I'm recording this at Friday 4 p.m. So the first being, Richarlison will probably have this weekend off to get over his knee issue, was the wording from Ange Postecoglou. So no Richarlison once again. If you still own Richarlison, I do think he's a decent sell now, especially if you do not have a free hit in 34, because obviously Spurs blank in 34. If you have your free hit in 34, then I suppose you could still maybe hang on to him depending upon the state of your bench. But where there's no confirmation that he's even going to be available for 33, and even if he is available, who says that he starts? Son through the middle with Brennan Johnson, Kulusevski, Werner around him does work very well. So I don't necessarily think this even means that Richarlison will be fit and available for 33. So I don't mind the idea of selling him. And if you decide you want to bring him back in, well, then you, of course, have that option. There was no mention of any issue for Brennan Johnson, despite the fact that he obviously went off in game week 31. Reports of potentially him having a niggle. Ange Postecoglou didn't bring that up. And Ange tends to be pretty honest in his press conferences. So I would say that outside Richarlison, we would expect the front three to be pretty stable. It might be that Werner gets the nod in this game, but I think Son will be playing through the middle. And that's the key thing to address here, is this does make Son a slightly better captaincy option than he already was, because we know that Sonny is slightly better through the middle, at least this season in Ange Postecoglou's setup. On Arsenal, there is a section in this video where I'll talk about the idea of doing Saka to Foden, because it is a very popular question for this week. Saka will be assessed in training on Friday afternoon to decide how fit he is. We will not ever, unless he has a sudden drastic change in his approach, get any useful information from Arteta. And I would actually go as far as saying with Arteta, and I don't think this is unfair, it's almost the opposite of what he says. If he says Saka's 100% fit, I think honestly that Saka's probably injured. And if he says Saka's injured, I probably think he's fit. There are certain managers that just conceal information, and there are others that directly lie. And Arteta, along with Eddie Howe, is a manager that will just directly lie straight to your face. So I think Saka probably is in contention and probably will be available for 32, but I would not be surprised if he misses out completely, and maybe there's something slightly worse going on than we currently know. We should hopefully maybe get some news on whether Saka is available, maybe in the embargoed quotes on Friday, or maybe we'll get some pictures from the training for Arsenal on Friday. But once again, we've seen in the past, Arsenal actually maybe again conceal some of the training pictures from Friday's session to maybe just make it a little bit more difficult for their opposition to predict. So basically, I have absolutely no idea, but my prediction would be that Saka is going to be available for Brighton. On Newcastle, Eddie Howe, again, don't believe everything you hear from him, but he is hopeful that Lewis Hall will return to training on Saturday ahead of Game Week 32. Again, a lot of people looking at maybe bringing in Hall because he's at a very cheap price. Livramento and Almiron will be out for a few weeks. So I do think if Hall is available, it's likely that we'll see Burn and Fabian Schär at centre-back and then Lewis Hall at left-back with maybe Emil Krath at right-back. There is currently no update on Trippier. Eddie Howe decided not to offer any information there, but he is predicted or expected to be out for another 2 to 3 weeks. So again, I think the back four for Newcastle, assuming they're all fit and available, will be Emil Krath, Fabian Schär, Dan Burn and Lewis Hall. So not the strongest, but they did do pretty well in Game Week 31 with that exact back four. On Wolves, we actually have some interesting updates, and I think this will affect a lot of the players that we're potentially looking at bringing in. Hwang Hee-chan and Dawson are now both back in training and be assessed ahead of West Ham. I don't think either will be in the squad, is my prediction at the moment, but I could be wrong on that. I think even if both are in the squad, I don't expect either of them to start. We've seen with Gary O'Neill this season, he doesn't rush players straight back in, and I think that's a good thing. So I think even if Hwang is available, I don't think he comes back into the starting 11, but that is only my prediction. The only information that we actually have is that they're back in training. What this does mean moving forward is at the moment, Aït-Nouri is playing as a left winger, but the only reason Aït-Nouri is playing as a left winger is because Hwang isn't available. I think once Hwang's back, he goes into the left wing role, and I think Aït-Nouri will then drop back into left wing back or left back. I still think Aït-Nouri's first choice, but once Aït-Nouri then drops back into left back or left wing back, he then does have some competition with Hugo Bueno. So I don't think that this is great news for Aït-Nouri, but I do think that we should at least get one more game, hopefully, with Aït-Nouri in that left wing position. And then this also does offer Hwang Hee-chan as a potential option ahead of double game week 34, whether you're on your free hit or not. So some pretty decent updates there on Wolves. Also, I know lots of people wondering about Cunha. Cunha has been training for a while now and is feeling good. My prediction is based on the fact that he got minutes in Game Week 31. He looked very good and he's still feeling good. I would be surprised if Cunha does not start in Game Week 32. So my current prediction is Cunha to start, Hwang and Dawson to either be in the squad or not, but I would be surprised if either of them start. But then ahead of Game Week 33, I think we'll probably see both Hwang and Dawson back in the starting 11. On Man City, Ake and Walker will both still be out for Game Week 32, which is good news if you own Gvardiol. He looks very nailed on at the moment. And Ederson is doing much better and could be in for a return for Game Week 32. So if you've got Ederson in your team and you're hoping to start him this week, there is a good chance that he will be available and starting. But we did think that he could even be back for 31. So maybe it's taken a little bit longer than they expected for Ederson. Another update on a goalkeeper, this time on Areola. Moyes said that he has a tweak to his groin. We hope it's not going to be too long. So it looks like Areola will be out once again for Game Week 32 based on this information, but doesn't look like he'll be out for the remainder of the season. So if you have Areola in your team and maybe you're thinking, I kind of want to play him for a bench boost in 37 because I believe that West Ham have Luton, correct me down below if I'm wrong, then you could potentially keep him and he might be available for the back end of the season, but doesn't look like he'll be available for 32. On Manchester United, there was no official press conference today because obviously they played against Chelsea on Thursday, and I'm going to completely ignore that result. Lindelof and Lisandro Martinez do look like they'll be out for at least a month. And there is no update on Varane and Evans, who both went off at halftime in Game Week 31. Oh, sorry, Varane went off at halftime, and then Evans came on and then went off after that. So both forced off. It does look like Maguire is absolutely nailed on at the moment because there aren't any other really senior, fully fit centre-backs. I think that there is a good chance that Maguire starts every game for the remainder of the season because what you would need for me, for Maguire to not start every remaining game, is you would need both Varane and Lisandro Martinez to be fit. Because I think Maguire is probably our third choice favoured centre-back behind Varane and Martinez. So as long as those two aren't fit, I think, or as long as both aren't fit, I think Maguire will start. And the likelihood of both being fit at the moment, I just can't see it. Because even if Varane is back, he just can't stay fit. Lisandro's out for at least a month. So my prediction is that Maguire will probably be fine for you. But if there is a world in which Varane and Lisandro come back and they're fit together, there is a little bit of a risk with Maguire. On Crystal Palace, Elise is potentially back now for Game Week 32. And fit enough, according to the manager, to get 15 to 20 minutes. And I'm glad we got a pretty precise update there. Again, Elise is now a serious option for double Game Week 34. If Elise's fit and starting, let's say he gets good minutes in Game Week 32. Let's say he gets a start in 60 minutes, 70 minutes in Game Week 33. I think there's a good chance I have both Hwang and Elise in my free hit draft. I really like Elise as an FPL option. So that's exciting news that we might have him back. On Aston Villa, if you did hold on to Ollie Watkins, we didn't get a definitive update, but he could potentially be available for the game in 32. And if he is available, you'd probably want to start him because he'll be a serious differential. And Emi Martinez could also be available as well. So Unai Emery said they'd basically be assessed ahead of the fixture in 32. The final update is around Brighton. Webster and Ferguson are both out and added to the injury list for Game Week 32. The reason I bring up Webster and Ferguson, it's another defender added to the injury list for Brighton, which is, I think, pretty good news for Van Heck. I think Van Heck's nailed anyway, but obviously more defenders being out means he is even more nailed on. So I like Van Heck as an option. And Ferguson being out makes me very interested in João Pedro. Because I think, again, João Pedro is probably their first choice number 9. And even if he doesn't play number 9, he can play in the number 10 role. And he's on penalties. The fixtures coming up in the weeks that you need them are pretty good for Brighton assets. They double in 37. I've got a keen eye on João Pedro as a potential option. Probably not in the immediate future, but maybe from 35 onwards, he's an option to bring in. So I think I've got all of the press conference updates there. Let me know down below if I missed anything. And if we get any quotes or training pictures that are uploaded throughout Friday afternoon and evening, I'll of course cover that in the deadline stream at 9 AM on Saturday. So guys, this was received very well in Game Week 30, I think it was, that I did the captaincy analysis. So let me know down below if you do want to see this every week. It takes a bit more time than some of the other graphics, but it can be very useful, especially when captaincy is pretty divided. And I think this is arguably one of the most difficult captaincy decisions this season. Palmer against Sheffield United away, Son against Nottingham Forest at home, Salah against Manchester United away, and Haaland against Crystal Palace away. There are other options, of course, but I think most people are choosing between these 4 players. So I wanted to discuss their underlying data, the strength of the opposition that they face, where do the oppositions that they're facing concede most of their chances from, and a little bit more. So I've updated the table based on the feedback that you gave me, and if there is more feedback that you'd like, please let me know. I tried to give home and away data for each player, and I tried to give home and away data for the teams that they're facing, but a few people said that it wasn't quite clear which parts we should be looking at. Basically, are the players playing at home or away? So essentially, if the square is in dark grey with the font in white, it means kind of ignore that box. For example, Palmer's home data doesn't matter because Palmer's playing away. Equally, the opposition's defensive data away from home, i.e. Sheffield United's away data, doesn't matter because Sheffield United are playing at home. So basically, I've still got the information in those charcoal grey boxes, but it's not directly relevant to Game Week 32. All of the other boxes are directly relevant. So in this table, what I've presented is the non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 for each player, home and away, across the season. The third column is then their data both home and away, but across the last 6 to see are those players performing very well at the moment. I've then got the opposition defensive data at home and away. And then I've got the opposition defensive weakness. Where do they concede most of their chances from? And if it says left-hand side, that is the left-hand side of the opposition. So if it says left for, let's say, Spurs, that is Son's side, i.e. the left. If it said right, it would mean it is Kulusevski's side on the right. So I think I changed that from last time because there was a bit of confusion. So if it says left, it is kind of Sonny's side. If it says right, it's Kulusevski's side. For Chelsea, if it says left, it's more like Sterling Mudryk. If it says right, it is Palmer. So hopefully that clears it up moving forward for this oppositional defensive weakness part of the video. And there are some really interesting things to look at here. Firstly, Cole Palmer is not very good away from home. And we spoke about this in previous weeks as well. So Palmer's home data this season, 0.73 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90. But his away data is 0.38. That means his home data is almost over double that of his away data. So 0.38 is not a particularly promising number there for Palmer. And it makes me a little bit hesitant to captain him, although we will discuss in a second that he is playing against Sheffield United. So that, of course, does need to be considered. But over the last 6, his data is pretty good at 0.67 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90. So overall, Palmer has very good data this season. We know he's on penalties, and he's had a hell of a lot of those, and he takes the penalties very well, and he's pretty good for minutes too. And as I said in a second, we'll look at the fixtures, and Palmer has the best of the bunch. So I'm not saying that this should completely put you off Palmer, but if you are looking to go different and you're looking for a reason for that, because Palmer appears to be the most popular captaincy option this week, that away data is not particularly promising. Heung-min Son's data is really interesting. He's just so consistent. So home data 0.58, away data 0.56, data in the last 6 0.59. Sonny is just a super consistent FP option, and every game you'll expect him to get 1 or 2 chances for attacking returns minimum. So I really like Son as an option. Nothing here to suggest that he's much better at home though. And again, normally the advantage of captaining a player at home is, as you can see with Palmer, Salah and Haaland, or Palmer and Salah actually, not Haaland, players tend to be better at home. Whereas with Son, it doesn't appear to be a massive advantage for him playing at home versus playing away. I'm actually going to say Haaland next, because Haaland, we've got a very similar situation. So Haaland's home data is 0.88, his away data 0.91, and his data over the last 6, 0.91. In previous seasons, or last season at least, Haaland's home data was much stronger than his away data, and that's what we normally expect from him. But this season, his away data is actually slightly better. And remember, he's playing Crystal Palace away. Over the last 6 as well, despite the fact that he's been very frustrating to own for large spells, his data has still been really strong. So I look at this and I think, actually, considering that his data is actually slightly better away and a lot of the other players don't have brilliant data, Haaland may be, at least based on underlying data, one of the better options to consider. And he did get a full rest in midweek as well. Just finishing off with Salah's individual data, we've got a similar-ish situation to what we get with Palmer, in that Salah is much better at home. So his home data is 0.91, but his away data isn't anywhere near as bad as Palmer's. So his away data is still pretty strong, better than the likes of Son home or away at 0.68. So whilst with Salah there is a bit of a downturn in his underlying data when we look away from home, it is still definitely respectable. And across the last 6, of which he's only actually played 4, and only 2 of those start, so a bit of a smaller sample size, we know that he has come back with a bit of a bang, and he's currently looking at a 1.13 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 over the last 6. So Salah, a really, really nice option. And based on this, and you probably didn't need me to tell you this, Salah and Haaland, if we're just looking at underlying data for the individual, are the 2 best options home and away. It doesn't really matter where you look. Palmer's away data worries me slightly. And I think almost in the other direction, a little bit disappointing that Son's home data isn't that much stronger. So therefore, when people are saying, I'm captaining Son because Son is playing at home, I don't buy that massively because Salah away and Haaland away appear to be slightly better than Son at home. So that maybe debunks the myth that you just always pick a player playing at home. When we then look at the fixtures, it almost paints the entirely opposite situation. And this is why captaincy is sometimes difficult, because you've got slightly better options with slightly weaker fixtures or slightly weaker options with slightly better fixtures. Palmer has the best fixture. And actually, interestingly, Sheffield United are worse defensively at home. So Sheffield United are the worst defence in the league at home. And obviously, they are playing at home against Chelsea. Away from home, they're slightly better. So in terms of targeting fixtures, it genuinely cannot get any better than what we're getting for Palmer here. So whilst his data away from home isn't good, he's playing the worst defence. So it's about that balancing act. Do you buy into the fact that Palmer's data away isn't great, or do you buy more into the fact that Sheffield United are just a bit of a mess at home? I think the fixture probably is more important in this situation than the underlying data because we know how good Palmer is as an option. On Son versus Forest, Forest are pretty good across the board. They're about a mid-table defence. Away from home, they are slightly weaker than at home. So from a matchup perspective, this obviously suits Son slightly more. We know that Forest are slightly better defensively at home, but they're still only 11th. We saw last season they were much weaker away from home, but we're not really getting that picture here. So I don't think Forest are pushovers. And if you consider that Son's data also isn't that much better when he plays at home, I don't look at this as obviously Son against Forest at home is the one to go for. Still a great option, by the way, but this isn't perfect. And Manchester United, interestingly, at home, they defend slightly better, right? I don't think the results have always gone that way this season, but they are 13th for non-penalty expected goals conceded at home. Away from home, they are second bottom. So if this was at Anfield, I think it's an easy captaincy decision. The fact that it's Old Trafford, I do think it makes it a slightly more difficult one. This also doesn't take into account how bad United have been in the recent game weeks. Across the last 6, they're one of the worst defences in the league. They've just been capitulating in every single game. With Salah also getting a bit of a rest midweek, I would expect Salah to play 90 here. And I think, if I was to predict, by the way, I think Salah will get 1 or 2 attacking returns in the last 15 minutes of the game. That seems to be when Manchester United capitulate, and that is when Salah is often at his most effective. So when we just look at the data here, Man United don't look awful defensively. They're a similar-ish defence at home to what we see from Forest away, but I don't think that paints the entire story. Finally, on Erling Haaland playing against Palace, Palace are actually the 4th best defence in the league at home this season, which is remarkably good. Palace don't give up many opportunities at Selhurst Park. Away from home, they're 12th. So again, if this was at the Etihad, much more comfortable decision to be made. But away from home, they're pretty good. At Selhurst Park, they're pretty good. So I don't like this fixture being away for Haaland. So again, it's almost like they're counteracting each other. Haaland is comfortably the best option here looking at his underlying data, especially away from home. But then we look at Palace's home data, and it's very, very strong. So it's very, very difficult to decide which one you give most credit to. Is it the underlying data of the individual or of the team? It's probably a combination of each. And then just finishing off with the opposition defensive weaknesses, it pretty much suits Palmer, Son and Salah perfectly. And Haaland's actually the one it doesn't particularly suit, but we know that Erling Haaland is Erling Haaland. So actually on Haaland, Palace concede most of their chances down the right-hand side. So if it were to be Bernardo Silva operating on that side, whoever it may be, maybe a Doku out there potentially. But it doesn't really seem to be the case that Palace concede most of their chances through the centre. But again, it's Erling Haaland, and it could be that he concede chances from the right-hand side and it ends up falling to Haaland anyway. And then for the other 3, it suits them pretty much spot on. So for Chelsea and then obviously Sheffield United concede most of their chances down the left and right side, but actually mostly on the right side, which is where Palmer operates. For Son against Nottingham Forest, Forest actually concede most of their chances in the centre and right. So if Son was playing on the left, it would actually probably be the case that it doesn't suit Son much at all. But playing through the centre, this looks very, very good for him. And it's actually exactly the same then against Manchester United. Man United's left-back situation has been a bit of a mess this season. And as a result, they've conceded a lot of chances through the centre, but also on the right. So that suits Salah absolutely perfectly because he starts out on the right and he drifts centrally. So in terms of matchups, when we look at underlying data and also the weaknesses of the opposition, it certainly looks like Palmer's probably got the best fixture, then followed by Salah, then Son, then Haaland. But if we're looking at underlying data, it's probably something like Haaland, Salah, Son, Palmer. So it's almost a complete flip depending on what you're looking at. At the moment, when I look at this, and I'm making this decision as I'm speaking because I've been on all 4 at different points, I think Palmer probably is just about the standout option, just given the fixture. But if you do take into account underlying individual data as well, Salah is probably up there as the second best or maybe even joint best. So I think for me, I think it's unlikely it's going to be on Son or Haaland, but it could be. I think for me, it's probably between Palmer and Salah. But I would love to know down below in the comments, based on everything that I've said and your own gut feeling, who do you think you'll be captaining for Game Week 32? So pretty much the only question I got over on Twitter around Game Week 32 for this video was around, should we sell Saka for Foden? And therefore, it will be obviously a big thing to discuss here. I think there are a couple of things to think about with this. Firstly, do we get any information? And this is an obvious point to make, but if Saka's fit and available, I would say pretty much for everyone, no, this doesn't make sense. unless you are looking at genuinely having to burn a transfer. You've got 2 of them, you've got nothing you want to do, and you think any other transfer would really harm your team, then I don't hate it. But other than that, if Saka's fit and available, my answer to this is probably no. But let's say we don't get an update on Saka. The next thing to know is, do we get an update on Foden? I just wanted to double check here because I think City are the early kickoff. Yeah, so City play at 12:30. There is a very good chance we get information around whether Foden starts. That would obviously change my opinion as well. If Foden doesn't start, then obviously not. If he does, then it makes him much more viable because you can at least confirm a start for him. So I think information around Saka's fitness and information around whether Foden starts in 32 is quite useful. The other thing to consider, and I've got the fixtures up here so that I remember, is they both have Champions League games coming up. So Arsenal play against Brighton tomorrow, which is on Saturday. They've then got Bayern Munich on Tuesday at home. They've then got Villa on Sunday, then Bayern on Wednesday, and then Wolves a few days after that. And then Chelsea a few days after that. I mean, the games are coming pretty thick and fast for Arsenal. So if Saka is genuinely really struggling, not just with fitness, but let's say he has some actual serious injury issues, and sorry if you can hear a siren in the background, if he does have those issues, then I just don't know that Saka can genuinely start all of these. And if you're starting to look at it as Saka probably only starts 5 of the next 6, maybe even 4 of the next 6, I can't see him getting rested against Bayern. So you could look at him only getting 2 out of the next 4 in the Prem. I just don't think that will be the case though, because Saka has started so many games for Arsenal, even when he has been struggling with injuries and issues. But it is worth noting that there is some serious fixture congestion coming. But if I go to Man City's fixtures, they've got a similar situation themselves as well. So they've got Crystal Palace tomorrow, the early kickoff. Then on Tuesday, they play against Real Madrid, and that is away from home. They then play against Luton on the Saturday, then Real Madrid after that. Then a few days later, they've got Chelsea in the semi-final. Then they've got Brighton. So the fixture schedule for both Arsenal and City is looking very, very jam-packed. And I think there is a good chance that both of these players see some more rotation. But Foden's been playing every single game. I don't think that necessarily means that it always continues. I don't know if you remember last season. Was it last? Yeah, it was last season. Foden started either the first 12 or 13 games of the season and got 90 in 11 of them, right? So he started 13, got 90 in 11, I think it was, along those lines. And then he just got benched 4 games in a row. Now, I don't think this is the same Phil Foden that we're dealing with. I think Phil Foden is now a critical member of that first team for City. So I don't think he's going to miss multiple games here. But I do think there is a very, very good chance that he misses Palace or Luton. And I think if he gets that Palace start, he's then definitely playing against Real Madrid away. You could bet your life on that. Is he going to get rested against Luton? I mean, if you're going to give him a rest, as we saw with Saka, by the way, in Gameweek 31, that Luton at home game is the one to do it. If I had to predict now, I think Foden will be benched in one of the next 2. But I've been saying that Foden could be due a rest for a while now, and he just isn't getting it. And he doesn't look like he needs it particularly. So I know that doesn't really help much, but I would be a little bit worried about a benching for Foden in the next 2. On Saka, I think given that he's just had his rest, assuming he's not really injured and he's just suffering with a few little knocks here and there, which he has been all season, I would expect him to start the next 2 games against Brighton and Villa. So I'm going to put it out there as just a prediction. I think Saka gets more minutes than Foden over the next 2, but that could be terribly wrong. And I think if that is the situation that we have, then no, I don't think I would want to bring in Foden for Saka now. And I do just question how much of it is driven by that hat-trick. And I know that's such a stupid thing to say because he's just got an open play hat-trick, right? No penalties in there. And he's just come off the back a few weeks before that of another 20 points hat-trick. But it was only from 0.4 XG, right? So in another day, like 2 of those were outrageous finishes, by the way. But Foden is a fantastic footballer. But I just wonder, is this a bit of recency bias and a bit of a knee-jerk, given that Saka missed out and Foden got a hat-trick? Potentially. But performance does need to be taken into account. The other thing to consider is what strategy you want. Because if you don't have a free hit left, I hate this move. Because I can guarantee you, unless he's continuing to struggle with issues, you are going to want Saka in Game Week 34. So Saka to Foden, if you have no free hit left, I hate it. If you've got a free hit left, like me, I think this is a lot more viable because you free up funds. You're probably going to want Foden in it anyway, right? I think I'm actually planning it in either 36 or 37, but could you just move that forward? Save some funds now, give you some more money to upgrade the likes of Lascelles? You certainly could. I mean, I've not really answered your question there at all, right? I've just given you loads of differing opinions, but I think what I could confidently say is if Saka's fit, I don't like it. If Foden doesn't start this week, I don't like it. But even if he does, I kind of expect a bit of rest for him against Luton, potentially. Both of them, I do think, will see reduced minutes at points due to the packed schedule. If you are free hitting in 34, I like it a lot more than if you aren't free hitting in 34. For me, I just don't see the need to make this move this week. unless there are serious doubts around Saka, in which case I could be maybe tempted to make the move. For me, I'm looking at 2 possible weeks to do it. I think the first week to do it is 33 if the Luton at home, if we get some sort of confirmation potentially that he starts against Luton at home, but it's the 3 p.m. kickoff, not the 12:30. So I don't know if we will get Foden news, but let's say we just get a really early team that he starts against Luton. I probably prefer Foden against Luton than Saka against Villa. And then the other point that I may be looking at doing it actually is either 35 or 37. I don't think it makes that much sense, I should say, in 36, because I probably would say that I kind of maybe slightly prefer Saka in that week. So 35, I think I prefer Foden, and also obviously 37 with the double. So for me, myself, on my strategy, which is free hit 34, bench boost 37, I prefer Saka to Foden in 33, if we can get some confirmation around Luton, in 35 or 37. But I may decide that when it comes around to 37, I actually go for someone like a Pascal Gross or a Gordon instead, if Foden's minutes look reduced, or if the title is wrapped up at that point. Hopefully that is clear. I would love to know down below if anyone is making that move this week. Are you going to wait for some information around Saka, or do you just think it's a move you want to make based on Foden's recent form? So guys, this is not a normal sponsored segment, but I have a very exciting announcement for you. I've taken a job as the football manager for South London United, who are part of One Future Football's global virtual football league. One Future Football is a global league run solely by a very advanced AI engine with AI storylines, AI athletes, narratives, and much, much more. And each game is simulated over at One Future Football. You can watch this and you get underlying data for each player and more. It's pretty much like real life, other than the fact that obviously these games aren't actually taking place in real life. Most excitingly, fans have the ability to actually control how each club and team is developed, and also the development of players via training too, which we'll discuss more in the future. Some of these players, by the way, actually have their own social media accounts. So our star player, Ruben Sinclair, who I'll discuss a bit later, has his own Instagram. You can follow him over there too, which I think is pretty cool. So they've essentially created a global super league with 12 clubs from around the world. And for season 3 of One Future Football, they've decided to hire human managers, which is where I come on board. My club, South London United, is actually owned by Chris Smalling, Jesse Lingard, and Alex Greenwood, which I think is pretty cool. Sadly, we actually finished bottom of the league, 12th in season 2, so we have a lot of work to do, but it's only up from here. Before I explain further and show you my team selection ahead of round 1 of season 3, because I have made some changes based on what happened last year, I'd love to ask for your support. And this is the key thing that I'm asking you to do today. If you've watched my videos over the years and you've enjoyed them, please do this for me. There is a link down below to sign up to One Future Football. It's completely free to do, will not take a long time. When you sign up, feel free to say that FPL Raptor sent you, as you can see on your screen. But the most important thing, once you've signed up, go into the top right corner of the website and click on Dashboard. Once you go onto your dashboard, it will offer you the opportunity to select the club that you would like to support. There will be 12 clubs to choose from, but I do request, maybe even if you're not from the UK, that you just say that you support South London United, because that is my team. That is all you have to do. Completely free to do. Just say that you support South London United. And when you do that, it will come up saying that you own a certain amount of the club with a certain amount of credits. The more time you spend on One Future Football, the more of your club you own, and therefore the more input you'll be able to have on how the club is run as well. So that is honestly it. All I'm asking you to do is just support South London United, which you can do by heading over to onefuturefootball.com. There is a link down below in the description, going onto Dashboard, selecting South London United, and that is it. And then hopefully follow my journey throughout the season and see me take South London United to the top. So with all of that being said, let me now show you the players that I'm dealing with and the formation that I'm setting up for round 1. So guys, heading into round 1 of season 3, this is currently the starting 11 that I believe I will select for the game against Paris FC. It is a home game, but just as a bit of context, Paris are one of the best teams in One Future Football. And when I say one of the best teams, arguably the best team, and therefore we are definitely underdogs. This is like pulling it up against Manchester City in game 1, and I'm like a newly promoted side. Like, we are not expected to win this. However, it is a new season, and this is my first game in charge. So I'm certainly not saying we have no chance. The key change that I've made this season is last year we were playing 4 at the back and we were fantastic defensively, but the reason we finished bottom is we were basically last on every single metric for attacking football. We had no creativity, we had the lowest amount of shots every game, we just didn't have the chance to score goals. So I think the key way to counter that is to ditch the 4 at the back and just go for a slightly more attacking formation. And I've tried to select a formation which suits our star players. And the star players really are Adrian Grondon, who is playing right mid. He is comfortably our best attacker. He is getting slightly older. He's approaching 30 now, but he is so fantastic that we need to get him into his favoured position and into those advanced places where he can create. But we've also signed Sabri. Sabri looks basically like a Mohamed Salah regen. He's 18 years old, Egyptian, fantastic, very quick and very direct. So the idea here is if we can get Grondon and Sabri into those advanced positions, creating for Sinclair who's our key star striker, and Moyano, who we've signed this season to partner with Sinclair, the four of them should be able to create enough chances. We're going to play a slightly more direct attacking football this year. We're not going to hold off, and I expect there to be lots of goals in our games. If you're going to predict the way this goes, less clean sheets, but hopefully more goals. I think our midfield is still solid enough to still suit this formation with Sakura, Alcock, and Obagbamiro, because they are really, really defensively solid players with good physicality, and that three-man defense is very strong. Eke is our captain. He is very, very reliable, play pretty much every game. Nor is actually a left-back, but I've slotted him in at left centre-back because he's very tall and very physical, and Tesla, I think, is really suited to that right centre-back position too. Diaby was arguably our best player last season in goal, so when I look at this starting 11, it is very, very good. I'm very happy with it. I will confidently sit here now and say we will not finish bottom of the league this season. So I'm very excited. Ones to watch is definitely Grondon and Sabri, and I'm expecting Sinclair to have a big season too. And yeah, let me know if you've watched to this point. Are you excited? Are you looking forward to seeing me manage South London United? And also make sure to let me know down below if you do sign up so I can thank you personally. So guys, there we have it. That is my Game Week 32 deadline decisions video. Hopefully you did get some use out of today's video. And if you did, please do smash that like button. And if you've watched to this point and you're not yet subscribed, we are very close to 115,000 subs. So please do consider subscribing. But until next time, which will be the deadline stream, thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.